What does this particular lawsuit, this particular moment in history mean for the adoption more broadly of crypto, do you think?
So, Caroline, as Katie correctly pointed out, the industry is hoping that this will be a cathartic moment in the sense of cleaning out some of the charlatans and perhaps also providing some regulatory clarity if regulators do move forward. But the reality is that Sam Bankman-Fried, again, was seen as a messiah in some of these circles, and he was seen as delivering on some of the promises of decentralized finance. Now, what the FTX collapse really shows is how far this notion of Bitcoin and decentralized finance, which was supposed to turn away from traditional financial institutions, how far it has strayed from that promise. In effect, what we are seeing is that many of the problems of traditional finance are being imported into the cryptocurrency world. In particular, centralization in the form of exchanges like FTX, which become single points of failure. And the notion that we can actually have decentralized trust, which was the whole underpinning of Bitcoin, doesn't quite seem to be bearing out, because we are seeing that people seem to want to hold their crypto assets in centralized exchanges like FTX, where they also undertake trading activities.
Yeah.
So right now we seem to be seeing a lot more centralization rather than decentralization.
That's interesting. Where could we see an optimization of decentralized exchanges? They do exist. There's Uniswap, for example. How are we seeing a movement towards that future of crypto, if at all?
I think we are beginning to see a bit of a bifurcation. There are many people who view Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as financial assets, really. And those are the people, including many somewhat naive retail investors, who seem to be taking the speculative approach to cryptocurrencies, and they're holding on to these assets. But at the same time, there is actually a rather vibrant market of decentralized finance, which so far has not really delivered on its promise of democratizing finance. It's created a lot of financial engineering, speculation, and so forth. But I think there is real promise there that with blockchain technology, we might be able to move to a world where we no longer rely on traditional institutions, where blockchain-based finance through smart contracts and so on can make financial systems a lot more efficient.
Eswar, what is necessary to get there? Is it clear regulation, not just in the US, but more globally?
Regulation is certainly going to be needed, Caroline. I think regulation that creates guardrails so that, first of all, you have some of the basic elements of financial stability, institution-specific stability, as well as systemic stability taken care of, investor protection considerations taken care of, and most importantly, guardrails to make sure that we don't have excessive concentration in the space or decentralized finance being used purely for speculation or for illicit transactions of various sorts. And I think the notion of the industry policing itself through technology, I think, is not going to work. We are going to need some guardrails. And the question is, how best do we set up those guardrails without stifling the innovation together? I think there are steps being taken in many jurisdictions, including the US, but we are still a long way away from the right sort of regulatory environment so that we can get this ecosystem to foster and thrive without necessarily creating illegal and illicit activities.
Eswar, give us your, therefore, bird's eye perspective, your global expertise here, because are there areas where you think are leading the charge in terms of a best fit regulatory environment?
Now, Europe, the United Kingdom, and Japan have moved forward in terms of at least trying to define various categories of cryptocurrencies and crypto assets more broadly, and that's certainly helpful as a start. But I think, Caroline, there is really still a sort of conceptual struggle going on in terms of trying to decide whether one can take existing regulatory frameworks and fit these new products into them, or if these are new technologies that require completely different regulatory frameworks. One thing that is becoming clear is that these are not the traditional sorts of products. They do have spillover risks into traditional financial systems, and we're going to need a coordinated approach at the global level rather than fragmented approaches at the national level. So we're making progress, but very slowly.
What does the role of the central banks have here, Eswar? I know this is something that you've looked in more broadly because of the digital revolution, as you call it in your book, how it's impacting currencies more broadly.
I think the biggest legacy of cryptocurrencies really is going to be that they have shown a pretty harsh light into the inefficiencies of traditional financial systems, especially international payments. Now, central banks are responding to this partly through regulatory actions, but partly also by fostering better forms of digital payments that are much more inclusive. In many parts of the world, payments are largely digital already, with physical currency or cash not playing a big role. So many central banks are moving towards central bank digital currencies that can be used for retail payments. In the US, it has catalyzed action by the Fed to move towards a suite of better wholesale and retail payments in the form of FedNow. So I think a lot of nice changes are brewing in financial systems, including in domestic international payments, thanks to cryptocurrencies. But whether cryptocurrencies themselves will play a very important role in this, I think remains to be seen.
There is, therefore, this sort of tension between generally a centralized version of what the utopia is of pure decentralization, and then, of course, there's the need for regulation. More broadly, Eswar, when you've written a book about this, when we've seen the highs and the lows of exuberance around crypto die off, how many people are still asking you for your guidance? How many years do you think this will ultimately take?
I think there is a fundamental shift in terms of digitization of payments, as I mentioned, but also, the ability for financial institutions to conduct existing forms of business in more efficient ways, but also to foster more competition among financial systems. And certainly, as we see cross-border finance become much more friction-free, thanks to these new technologies which are being adopted even by traditional financial institutions, I think we will see significant efficiency gains. The real concern is whether, like in the cryptocurrency ecosystem, we end up seeing even more concentration in traditional finance because existing incumbents could end up using these technologies to their advantage. And I think this is where regulators will play a very important role to make sure that regulations don't just become a barrier to entry for new financial firms, but just create new guardrails for this innovation to thrive.